So hello and welcome to our second edition of Studio 2020. My name is Rasha Alkata and I'm currently a policy analyst with the International Assistance Policy Coordination Team here at Global Affairs Canada. With us in the studio, we're very lucky to have Stuart Savage join us here today. He's the Director General of Geo Coordination and Mission Support, as well as the Vice Champion of Blueprint 2020. I'd also like to welcome our viewers online who are tuning in today. Studio 2020 is focused on culture change and modernization, as well as creating a real dialogue between junior employees in the department and senior managers like you'll see today. Stuart, thank you for joining us. So you've had a really long and distinguished career here in the department. You know, it would be really interesting, I think, for our viewers to know what got you interested in joining Global Affairs Canada.
Well, thanks for inviting me here today. And I think one of the reasons that I appreciate being part of this Global Affairs family is meeting people like you who are sort of young, energetic, and eager to learn and explore new ways of thinking, being, and interacting with the world. So that's something I've learned, though, sort of after the fact. Originally, when I was thinking about work and life and how to make a living, I was inspired very much by the fact that all my grandparents were immigrants to Canada. And I knew all my grandparents very well, and they were lovely people. And it made me think about the world beyond Canada, because obviously the reality of my family started before they got to Canada and continued when they got here and developed into something new here in Canada. And I thought, what does that mean, as a human being, and what does that mean in terms of how countries interact and societies grow and change? So I think really that my interest in the world and international things came from that. And from that point on, as a teenager and a young man, I explored traveling, I did exchanges internationally, and I thought, well, what kind of career or job could I have that will integrate that into my sort of regular routine? And of course, the sort of obvious thing is diplomacy and international relations. And I was just lucky enough to have written the exam and got in. And so here I am today. No one's kicked me out yet. And, and I hope I will be able to do a little bit more good before they do finally kick me out in a few years.
I'm sure that won't happen. You're definitely an asset to the department. So you've served a really long time in the department. Is there a moment that comes to mind that's a real highlight of your career that you could share with us?
Well, I don't think there's a single highlight. I think there are a few things that can come to mind, and if you ask me this tomorrow, I'll probably come up with different answers. Yeah. But a few that come to mind are very early in my career as a junior officer. I was sent on a temporary duty to New York to serve at the United Nations General Assembly as a junior advisor, a very distinguished title. And I think there was nothing like the thrill and excitement of being on your first quote-unquote posting, and it was my first time officially sent abroad for the department, and then serving in a place where you literally have the entire world sitting around you, discussing issues, and you being a part of that. And I had an opportunity at that occasion to speak at the General Assembly and do analysis and feedback to Ottawa, and it was very exciting and fun. Then on my first full posting, I was sent to Cuba. And when we were in Cuba, the Pope came to visit, John Paul II, and the Canadian Conference of Archbishops sent the Pope-mobile, the Canadian Pope-mobile.
So this is for your second posting?
Yeah.
Another kind of highlight.
And I was responsible for the Pope-mobile in Cuba, so I thought that was a really fun thing to do, and not the kind of typical thing you associate with diplomacy. And then, of course, I have to obviously point to the fact that I was very lucky and honored to be able to serve as Canada's ambassador to Guatemala and High Commissioner to Belize. And there's nothing like having that kind of privilege and honor, and that certainly marked my career and my life, and I'm very grateful to have had that.
And so now in your role as Director General of Geo Coordination and Mission Support, you're really well tooled into what's happening in missions abroad. So, when we think of the Blueprint 2020 vision, it's about a world-class public service equipped to service Canada and Canadians now and into the future. How do you see this vision being relevant to our colleagues in missions abroad?
It is profoundly relevant to all of us, whether we're in headquarters or abroad, because it empowers us to think of how to be better, how to be world class, and what that means every day in our routine, in our tasks, in how we interact with each other. So I think that above all, it's relevant because it gives us the power and the credibility to try new things and to be better, because we should always, I think, be striving to be the best possible to serve both the country and the people who are giving us the confidence and the resources, their tax dollars, to go out and represent them.
So Stuart, as the Vice Champion of Blueprint 2020, in what areas do you think Global Affairs Canada is making progress in really achieving that vision, and kind of as we really approach there? And also, what areas do you think we could still improve in?
Well, that's an excellent question, and it's always important, I think, to look back and think, what have we achieved, and with the time left, what can we still hope to achieve? For me, one of the key takeaways that I've seen evolve and change since Blueprint 2020 was launched was a real effort to break down silos and to see more collaborative work across streams, to get the right people doing the right jobs, finding the talent, going out and finding tiger teams, and or being creative in terms of bringing together the talent and the knowledge and the expertise necessary to try to achieve results. And I think that's been a real plus for Blueprint 2020 in the department, and in facilitating that, breaking down of silos and harnessing the talent of the people we have, and there's a lot of talent here. What can we do better? I think we can still work on our culture here to be less risk averse and dare to make a difference, to dare to try to innovate and do new things, take on sort of challenges and think outside of our little boxes and break the molds in order to go farther. Go past the existing operational procedures that we're used to, and dare to kind of do something a little bit different, and hopefully innovate and achieve better results as a consequence.
So I really like your point about daring to be different and daring to innovate and daring to go beyond the day-to-day job descriptions that we may or may not have. And so, as you know, one of the real guiding principles of the Blueprint 2020 vision is this embracing new ways of working and really kind of innovating the way that we collaborate with each other and working in a true team effort across the department. So, based on your expertise and your experiences, how do you think, what would your recommendation be for engaging colleagues in these new approaches, and how can we ensure that we're taking not just risks, but smart risks?
That's a great question. I think one of the sort of elements that motivates the Blueprint 2020 team is to work with change agents of change, people who are already trying to innovate and experiment in their own parts of their job, work, or parts of the department, parts of the network, whether it be here or in our missions abroad. And we'd like to try to facilitate and encourage these agents of change, and that involves exactly that, engaging with colleagues beyond those who are already sort of sold on the idea that we need to try to be innovative and adapt our new approaches and try to dare to be different, as we were saying before. And I think the best way of getting people on board is to address the issues that concern them. Try to come up with practical ways of solving problems or dealing with issues which are frustrating in the day-to-day work lives of people, and build on small successes to achieve new solutions that bring about benefits to the colleagues that people are working with, so that they can see that yes, change is possible. Yes, we can do things better in a smarter way or in a different way that makes it less burdensome. And I think by working bit by bit, we build our own credibility, and we build also more buy-in to the whole idea of trying to work across our normal desk jobs and build something bigger together.
So we're actually very fortunate in the department to have the Collaboration Center, as you know, and it, being a space to really bring together change agents and to challenge our colleagues across the department to think of new ways of working. And so, we really encourage colleagues to come and use a space, and there's a lot of great support at this center that we're very, very lucky to have. Can you share an example of how the space is being used by our colleagues to support their work, and this feeling of change that you speak about, and this idea of new ways of working?
Yeah, well, we're very lucky. The Collaboration Center got set up through, I think, again, being innovative in an approach to how to facilitate agents of change. There was this empty space here in the building that had been sitting sort of empty and not properly used for a couple of years, really. And so the Blueprint 2020 team was able to work with the property people and offer an idea and also offer their time and energy to curate this space, to try to make it something that energizes the department and these agents of change. So the Collaboration Center has been set up, and I think one of the big draws of the center is that it's not just another meeting room. And it doesn't try to be, or in fact it definitely doesn't want to be another meeting room. Yeah. And although physical space does not create innovation or creativity, I think it can encourage it. And so people come here, they see that it's got movable furniture, it's not like a condensed, stuffy, overheated meeting room where everyone's crowded together. There's light, you can move things around, you can have meetings standing up, you can use yoga mats if you want.
I've heard about that, yeah.
We have whiteboards on the wall. Some of these things are actually quite low tech, but they get people out of the regular routines that they're in terms of how they interact with each other. And that gets, I think, creative juices flowing and sort of builds this sort of energy and momentum that then brings about some interesting new results to dealing with the problems that people come here to try to solve. So the Collaboration Center, I think, is a real great platform for encouraging people to think outside of the box and come up with creative solutions.
So thank you again, Stuart, for your time and for sharing your expertise and your experiences with us. We're very fortunate to have you here. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in online to our second edition of Studio 2020. Thank you.